The smell hits you first. It is not the smell of life. It is the smell of wet straw, rusted iron, and the sharp metallic tang of blood cooling on a dirt floor. Imagine a room where the air does not move. It stagnates, thick with the humidity of a dying fire and the heavy, sour scent of fear. This is Europe. The year is 1348. Outside these mud walls, the world is ending. The Black Death is turning skin into charcoal and cities into graveyards. But inside this hut, a different kind of war is being fought. A war that has been waged since the beginning of time. A woman is screaming. It is a sound that does not belong to the human throat. It is a guttural, animalistic howl that tears through the freezing night air, vibrating the very foundations of the cottage. She is 19 years old. Her name is Elspeth. This is her third child. The first two do not have names. They are buried under the twisted oak tree just 10 paces from the door. No markers, just small, crooked wooden crosses that sink a little deeper into the mud every time it rains. In 1348, you do not name a child until it survives its first winter. And in this village, names are a luxury that few can afford. In the corner, a man is kneeling in the filth. He is the husband, but in this moment, he is a ghost. His hands are clasped so tight his knuckles have turned the color of bone. He is not helping. He is praying. He is begging a God that seems to have turned his back on this room. He is reciting psalms in a language he does not understand, hoping for a miracle that history says will not come. He is waiting for the inevitable. He is waiting for the silence. But there is another woman here. She is not praying. She is not kneeling in the mud. Her sleeves are rolled up past her elbows, revealing forearms corded with muscle and stained a deep, dark crimson. She is holding a small curved knife in one hand and a bundle of dried mugwort in the other. She is the midwife. Look at her eyes. They are not the eyes of a grandmother. They are the eyes of a general in a losing battle. Most people today think of a medieval midwife as a kind soul, a village healer, a comforting presence. They are wrong. In 1348, the midwife is a soldier. She is a surgeon working without anesthesia. She is a psychologist working in a room full of primal panic. She is the only person in this village who does not fear the blood, but she carries something else. Something far more dangerous than a knife. She carries knowledge. The air in the room shifts. The fire pops, sending a shower of sparks into the shadows. The midwife reaches into her leather pouch. It is a bag that has seen generations of life and death. Inside, it is not just herbs. It is a library of forbidden secrets. She pulls out a small, blackened root, ergot. The church calls it the devil's grain. They say it causes the holy fire, a disease that makes your limbs wither and fall off until you are nothing but a torso screaming in the street. And they are right. It can. If she uses too much, Elspeth's heart will seize and stop forever in the next 10 heartbeats. If she uses too little, the hemorrhage will turn this dirt floor into a red lake before the moon shifts. There is no scale here, no glass laboratory, no sterile measurements, just the weight of the root in her weathered palm. Just the instinct sharpened by 1,000 screams. This is the contrast of survival. The village priest stands at the door, clutching a wooden cross. He tells the husband that birth is a curse. He tells them that the pain is the price of Eve's sin. He tells them that if the mother dies, it is a divine transition. The midwife hears him, but she does not listen. While the priest offers words for the dead, She offers steel for the living. She works in the dark. She works in the cold. She works in the shadow of the noose. Every move she makes is a gamble. She presses her ear to Elspeth's swollen belly. She is not listening for a heartbeat. She is listening for the position of the head. If the baby is breached, the priest will tell them to let her die. He will say it is a sign that the child is a demon, or that the mother is tainted. But the midwife has a technique, a turning, a secret passed down from woman to woman, whispered in the woods, far from the ears of men in robes. It is a physical, brutal manipulation of bone and flesh. It is agonizing. It is terrifying. And it is the only thing that stands between this 19-year-old girl and a shallow hole in the ground. Let us talk about the numbers. Because to understand her life, you must understand the mathematics of the Middle Ages. We like to romanticize the past, the knights, the castles, the honor. But the reality of 1348 is a slaughterhouse for women. 1 in 3. Think about the women in your life, your mother, your sister, your daughter. In this village, 1 out of every 3 of them would not survive their childbearing years. Childbirth was not an event. It was a death sentence waiting to be carried out. The infant mortality rate was 50%. Every second child born in this hut would be dead before their 5th birthday. The midwife carries these numbers in her bones. Every time she enters a house, she is looking at a coin toss. Heads, a new life to feed. Tails, a funeral she has to organize. And yet, the world hated her for being the only one who could change the odds. Why? Because in a world ruled by the church, control belongs to God. To heal someone without a prayer, to use a root to stop the bleeding, to use a knife to save a child, was not just medicine. It was an act of rebellion. It was a claim that a woman's hands could be as powerful as a bishop's blessing. And the church did not take kindly to competition. You have been told the witch trials were about magic. You have been told they were about old women talking to cats or casting spells on crops. That is the lie history sold you. The witch was not a monster in the woods. The witch was the woman who knew how to stop a hemorrhage. The witch was the woman who knew that washing your hands in vinegar saved more lives than a week of fasting. The witch was the midwife. Back in the hut, the screaming suddenly stops. The silence that follows is so thick you can hear the embers of the hearth popping. The husband stops praying. He looks up. He sees the midwife standing over his wife. Her hands are dripping. The curved knife is on the floor. He looks at the bed, searching for the sound of a cry. But there is no cry. Instead, the midwife is looking at something she just pulled from the birth canal. Something that should not be there. Something that, if the priest sees it, will ensure neither the mother nor the midwife survives the night. She quickly covers it with a blood-stained cloth. She meets the husband's eyes. "Go," she whispers. Her voice is like dry parchment. "Get more water. Now." He hesitates. She does not wait. She grabs him by the collar with her bloody hand. "Go." The war for survival has just entered its darkest hour, and the secret she is hiding under that cloth is the reason why, for the next 500 years, the midwife would be the most hunted woman in Europe. Before the sun rises, she will have to decide. Does she save the child and risk the fire? Or does she let the secret die in the mud? The choice she makes in the next 5 minutes will echo through her lineage for centuries. But to understand her choice, we have to look closer at her hands. We have to look at the scars that tell the real story of the women who held the keys to the cradle and the grave. History is written by the men who stood outside the door. It is written by the men who sat in stone cathedrals, debating how many angels could dance on the head of a pin while women bled to death in the dark. But the midwife, she did not have time for stone cathedrals. She was too busy fighting the gravity of death. She was too busy memorizing the shapes of leaves and the cycles of the moon. She was the original scientist, hidden under a cloak of superstition. She was the bridge between the ancient world and the one we live in now. And she paid for that bridge with her own blood. Stay with me, because the door is about to open. The priest is moving. And what happens next is not just a birth, it is a crime. The heavy oak door creaks. It is a slow, agonizing sound, the protest of dry wood against rusted hinges. The husband is gone, vanished into the rain to find the water he was told to fetch. And in that vacuum of space, the shadow enters. He does not smell of blood. He smells of stale incense, old parchment, and the cold, suffocating scent of a stone cathedral that has never seen the sun. This is Father Thomas. To the village, he is the voice of God. To the midwife, he is the executioner. He stands in the doorway, his black robes absorbing what little light remains in the room. He does not look at Elspeth, the woman who has just torn her body apart to bring a soul into the world. He does not look at the blood on the floor. He looks at the midwife's hands. He is looking for a sign. He is looking for a reason to light a fire. The midwife feels the weight of his gaze. It is heavier than the exhaustion in her bones. She is still holding the cloth, the one she used to cover the secret she pulled from the dark. Underneath that cloth lies a truth that contradicts everything the man in the black robes believes. He moves closer. The floorboards moan under his boots. Every step is a heartbeat. Every step is a question. He represents the Fourth Lateran Council of 1215. He represents the decree that says no physician, and certainly no woman, shall provide a cure that does not first prioritize the soul over the body. To him, healing is a secondary concern. Penance is the primary one. He speaks, and his voice is like the grinding of stones in a mill. He asks if the child is born of sin. He asks if the midwife used the forbidden chants. He is not asking for information. He is building a cage. In 1348, the church had a monopoly on the afterlife. But the midwife, she had a monopoly on the present. And that made her the most dangerous person in the parish. Let us look at the reality behind his robes. In this century, the church taught that a woman's body was a vessel of corruption. They taught that the pain of labor was a divine necessity, a rhythmic torture that cleansed the soul of Eve's original transgression. To ease that pain was to interfere with God's justice. To use ergot to stop the bleeding was to rob God of a martyr. The midwife knows this. She knows that if she reveals the blackened root in her pouch, she is not just a healer anymore. She is a criminal. She is a rebel against the cosmic order. She stands her ground. She does not bow. She does not tremble. Her hands are still stained red, but she does not hide them. Think about the stakes in this small, mud-walled room. This is not just about one birth. This is the collision of two worlds. On one side, you have the world of the spirit, built on ancient texts, Latin prayers, and the threat of eternal fire. On the other side, you have the world of the flesh, built on observation, trial and error, and the desperate, whispered knowledge of women who have watched each other die for 1,000 years. The midwife is the scientist of the shadows. She knows that if she washes the wounds with wine, the fever stays away. She does not know why. She does not know about bacteria or infection, but she knows what works. She has seen the patterns. She has noticed that the women who are touched by the priest's unwashed hands after he has handled a corpse are the ones who never wake up the next morning. She has seen the correlation. She has made the connection. And in 1348, making a connection that does not involve a miracle is the ultimate heresy. Father Thomas reaches out a pale, thin hand. He wants to see the child. He wants to see if the baby is marked. In his mind, a deformity is not a medical anomaly. It is a brand of the devil. A cleft lip, a curse, a clubfoot, a sign of a deal made in the woods. If he sees what the midwife is hiding, he will call for the guards. He will claim the child as a changeling. He will take the baby to the stone font, and if it does not survive the ritual, it was never meant to be. The midwife moves. She steps between the priest and the bed. It is a small movement, but it is an act of war. She tells him the child is weak. She tells him the mother needs rest. She uses the only weapon she has, the priest's own fear of the blood. Men like Thomas fear the female body. They fear the mysteries of the womb. They see the blood, and they see something ritualistically unclean. She leans into that fear. She tells him the room is heavy with the vapors of the birth, vapors that can taint a holy man. He hesitates. The smell of the room, the iron, the sweat, the raw reality of survival, pushes against his sterile world. He recoils. Just an inch. But an inch is all she needs. But the tension does not break. It only tightens. Because outside, the rain has stopped. And in the sudden quiet, a new sound rises. It is the sound of bells. Not the bells for a wedding. Not the bells for a Sunday mass. These are the slow, rhythmic tolls of the death bell. The plague has reached the gates of the village. The Black Death is no longer a rumor from the south. It is here. It is breathing at the door. Father Thomas turns his head toward the window. His face turns the color of ash. He knows that his prayers have not stopped the fires in the cities. He knows that his holy water has not cleaned the sores of the dying. For the first time, he looks at the midwife, not as a predator looks at prey, but as a drowning man looks at a jagged rock. He knows she deals in death just as much as she deals in life. He knows she is the only one who does not run when the boils appear, but he cannot let her know that he is afraid. He cannot let the power slip. He turns back to her. He tells her that the plague is a scourge for the wicked. He tells her that those who use secret arts will be the first to burn. He leaves the hut, but he leaves his shadow behind. He leaves the threat hanging in the air like the smoke from a guttering candle. The midwife is alone again. She breathes, but her heart is racing. She goes back to the bed. She lifts the cloth. Underneath, the child is not a demon. The child is not a monster, but the child is blue. The cord was wrapped around its neck, a silken noose that almost finished what the church started. She has to act. She has no equipment. She has no oxygen. She has only her breath and the knowledge of the life spark. She leans down. She puts her mouth over the tiny, cold nose and mouth of the infant. She breathes, not a prayer, just air. One breath, silence, 2 breaths, nothing, 3 breaths. The numbers are back. In 1348, a baby that does not cry within the first minute is usually considered dead. The priest would have already been reaching for the burial shroud. But she counts. She measures the seconds by the thumping of her own pulse. 30 seconds, 40 seconds, 50. And then, a sound. It is a tiny, fragile cough. It is followed by a thin, reedy wail. It is the most beautiful and the most dangerous sound in the world. The life has been snatched back from the abyss. But the battle has only just begun. Because the plague is at the door, the priest is watching from the shadows, and the midwife has just committed her second crime of the night. She has brought someone back from the dead without asking for permission. She looks at her hands. They are still shaking. But she is not done. She knows that the next few days will be a test of everything she has ever learned. She will have to hide the mother, protect the child, and somehow outrun the shadow of the Black Death that is currently sweeping through the village like a scythe through wheat. She thinks of the women who came before her. She thinks of the grandmother who taught her how to read the stars and the roots. She thinks of the price they paid. There is no glory here. There are no statues for the midwife. There is only the mud, the blood, and the secret that must be kept at all costs. As the sun begins to bleed over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and orange, she realizes that the invisible war is no longer invisible. It is written in the smoke of the village chimneys. It is written in the fear in the husband's eyes as he returns with the water. The war is here, and the midwife is the only one standing on the front line. But there is one more thing. Something she saw when she opened the child's eyes for the first time. Something that made her blood run colder than the winter rain. The child's eyes were not the color of the parents'. They were a color she had only seen once before, on a man who had visited the village years ago. A man who wore a signet ring she now sees burned into her memory. The secret she is holding is no longer just a medical one. It is a political one. And it is about to turn this small hut into the center of a storm that could topple a throne. But before we can understand the child, we have to understand the mother. We have to understand the price Elspeth paid to keep this child a secret. The air is getting colder. The bells are getting louder. And the midwife is just getting started. 40%. Say that number out loud. 40%. In a modern world, 40% is a statistic. It is a grade on a test. It is a discount at a shop. It is a piece of data on a screen that you glance at and then forget. But in 1348, 40% was not a number. 40% was the rhythm of the village bell. 40% was the weight of a small wooden box. 40% was the silence in the cradle that was supposed to be filled with noise. To understand the midwife, you have to understand the shadow she walked in. She did not just walk through the mud of the streets. She walked through a landscape of grief, so thick it was like breathing underwater. If you stood in the center of a medieval village and looked at 10 women walking past you, 4 of them were destined to die because of the very thing that was supposed to ensure the survival of the human race. Birth was the leading cause of death for women, not the plague, not the wars of kings, not the famines that swept through the valleys. It was the cradle. Let us take a walk. Not to the castle, not to the market. Let us walk to the edge of the churchyard. Look at the ground. You see the large ornate stones for the lords and the knights. You see the medium stones for the merchants. But look closer at the perimeter. Look at the places where the grass grows long and the earth is uneven. There are no stones here. There are only mounds. Hundreds of them. Thousands of them. Some are long, the length of a woman. Many are short, no longer than a loaf of bread. This is the real history of the Middle Ages. This is the secret geography of the world the midwife tried to protect. The church called these mounds God's harvest. They told the mothers that their children were flowers picked for a divine garden. They told the husbands that their wives were martyrs of the domestic hearth. They used words like sacrifice and sanctification. They used Latin to wrap the agony in a shroud of holiness. But the midwife? She did not see a divine garden. She saw a failure. She saw the physical reality of a body that had been pushed too far. She saw the twisted pelvises of girls who were married at 13 before their bones had even finished hardening. She saw the pale, translucent skin of mothers who were so malnourished they didn't have enough blood to spare for the birth. She saw the infections that turned a healthy woman into a corpse in 48 hours because no one thought to wash the grime of the fields off their hands before touching an open wound. The world of 1348 was a world of errors. Lethal, repetitive, arrogant errors. The professional doctors of the time, the men who studied in the universities of Paris and Bologna, they did not attend births. They considered it beneath them. They considered it women's work. They spent their time debating the balance of humors. They talked about yellow bile and black bile. They believed that if a woman was bleeding too much, the solution was to make her bleed more from her arm to balance the body. Think about that logic. A woman is dying of a hemorrhage, and the highest medical authority in the land wants to open a vein. The midwife stood as the only barrier against this madness. She was the one who noticed that the women who ate certain greens in the spring had stronger pulses. She was the one who realized that if you kept the room warm and the water boiling, fewer mothers caught the shaking chills. She was the one who understood that the position of the body mattered more than the repetition of a psalm. But she couldn't save everyone. And that is the part of the story they never tell you. They never tell you about the midwife's own grief. Imagine her walking home in the gray light of dawn. Her apron is heavy with the fluids of a failed labor. Her hands are cramped from hours of internal manipulation that ultimately led to nothing. She has to tell a father that his world is over. She has to tell a sister that she is now the mother of 5 orphans. She carries the 40% in her soul. She remembers every face. She remembers every name that was never given. In the modern world, we have forgotten what it feels like to live in a house where death is a permanent resident. We have the luxury of expectation. We expect the baby to breathe. We expect the mother to recover. We expect the technology to save us. In 1348, expectation was a sin. Hope was a gamble that most people lost. The midwife was the only one who tried to tilt the odds. She began to keep records. Not in books, because she wasn't allowed to read. Not in ink, because she couldn't afford it. She kept them in the patterns of her weaving. She kept them in the arrangement of the jars on her shelf. She kept them in the stories she told the younger girls. This was the birth of data. This was the beginning of evidence-based medicine, practiced in the dirt by women who were told they had no souls. She noticed that the girls who worked in the wool mills had more trouble with their backs. She noticed that the women who lived near the stagnant water of the marshes were the ones whose milk never came in. She was identifying environmental factors centuries before the word environment existed. But the more she knew, the more isolated she became. Because knowledge is a weight. To know why someone is dying and to be forbidden from stopping it is a special kind of torture. The priest told the village that the high mortality rate was a sign of the end of days. He used the 40% to keep them in the pews. He used the small coffins to extract more tithes. He turned the grief into a currency. The midwife saw the transaction. She saw the way the church profited from the silence of the graves, and her anger began to grow. It was a cold, quiet anger. It was the kind of anger that leads a person to take risks. She started to experiment. She started to look for ways to do what the men in robes said was impossible. She started to look for the secret garden. She had heard rumors of a plant that grew in the deepest parts of the forest, near the roots of the ancient oaks. A plant that, if prepared correctly, could dull the pain without stopping the heart. A plant that could bring a woman back from the edge of the shadow. But to find it, she would have to leave the village. She would have to go into the woods where the laws of the church didn't reach. She would have to risk being seen by the hunters or the guards, and she knew that Father Thomas was already suspicious. He had seen the way she looked at him during the funeral for Elspeth's first 2 children. He had seen the lack of fear in her eyes. The 40% was her motivation. Every time she buried a child, she felt the fire in her chest get hotter. She wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. She was fighting for revenge. Revenge against a system that considered a woman's life to be expendable. The numbers told her she was losing, but the numbers didn't account for her will. Think about the physical toll of her work. The midwife's body was a map of her career. Her knees were calloused from hours of kneeling on stone floors. Her back was permanently stooped from leaning over beds. Her skin was stained with the scents of vinegar and iron that no amount of washing could remove. She was a living monument to the women she couldn't save. And yet, she kept going. Why? Because of the 60%. Because of the moment when the gray, limp body of an infant suddenly turns pink. Because of the moment when the mother opens her eyes and reaches out her hand. Because of the moment when the village bell stays silent for one more day. The midwife was a gambler in the most high-stakes casino in history, and she was playing with a deck that was stacked against her. But she was about to find her ace. She was about to find the herb that would change everything. The herb that would give her the power of life and death, but also the power that would ultimately lead her to the stake. The statistics of shadows were about to be lit by the fire of a discovery. But as the midwife prepared to enter the forest, she didn't realize that the shadow she was trying to escape was already moving behind her. Father Thomas wasn't just watching the births anymore. He was watching the woods. He was waiting for her to make a move that he could finally label as witchcraft. The war was no longer just about the blood on the floor. It was about the plants in the earth. It was about who had the right to heal and who had the right to kill. The 40% was about to become the match that lit the entire world on fire. The midwife adjusted her cloak. She felt the weight of the curved knife against her thigh. She didn't look back at the village. She didn't look back at the churchyard with its thousands of mounds. She looked forward, into the dark, toward the only thing that could save the next mother in line. She was walking into the forbidden, and she was doing it for the women who couldn't walk anymore. The numbers were her map. The grief was her fuel, and the secret garden was her destination. But the forest has its own secrets, and some of them have been waiting for someone like her for a very long time. The forest does not welcome you. It does not offer the peace of a garden or the shade of a park. In 1348, the forest is a wall of darkness. It is the place where the maps end and the monsters begin. To the village, the forest is the home of the devil, the playground of spirits, and the source of every shadow that haunts their dreams. But for the midwife, the forest is something else. It is her laboratory. It is her sanctuary. It is her pharmacy. She moves through the undergrowth with a silence that would terrify a hunter. She does not use a torch. A torch is a beacon for the curious and the cruel. She uses her feet to read the earth. She feels the shift from damp clay to rotting pine needles. She listens to the wind as it combs through the canopy, translated into a language of direction and distance. Her hands, still stained with the dried blood of the birth, reach out to touch the bark of the ancient oaks. She is searching for a specific vibration. She is searching for the secret garden. Let us be clear about what she is doing. In the eyes of Father Thomas, this is not a walk. This is a pilgrimage to hell. The Church teaches that nature is a fallen realm, a wilderness that must be conquered and cleared to make way for the light of God. They believe that any healing power found in the roots of the earth is a trick of the enemy. If God wanted a woman to live, he would answer the prayer of a priest. If he wanted the bleeding to stop, he would send a miracle. To go into the woods and take that power for yourself is an act of supreme arrogance. It is a theft from the divine. But the midwife is a thief of necessity. She stops in a clearing where the moonlight barely touches the moss. She kneels, not to pray. She kneels to work. She pulls the curved knife from her belt. It is not a weapon for a soldier. It is a tool for a harvester. She begins to dig. She is looking for the blackened grain, the ergot. She finds it on a patch of blighted rye near the edge of a stagnant pond. To a farmer, this grain is a catastrophe. It is the cause of the dancing madness. It is the poison that turns bread into a weapon of mass death. In the wrong hands, this grain is an executioner. But in her hands, it is the only thing that can contract a failing uterus. It is the only thing that can squeeze the life back into a body that is trying to pour itself onto the floor. She measures it by touch. She feels the texture of the fungus. She knows that the potency changes with the rain. She knows that the grain gathered in the dark of the moon is different from the grain gathered in the full light. This is not magic. This is chemistry, practiced in the mud. This is the observation of a scientist who has no name for her science. The Church calls this witchcraft. History calls it medicine. But in 1348, there was no difference between the two. Think about the danger of this knowledge. If she is caught with this grain, she cannot explain its use. There are no medical journals to cite. There are no universities to back her up. She is just an old woman with a bag of poison. To Father Thomas, the ergot is proof of a pact with the dark. He does not see the woman who survived. He only sees the demon who provided the cure. The midwife moves to the next plant, belladonna. The beautiful lady. It is a plant of contradictions. Its berries are the color of a midnight sky. Its juice can dilate the eyes of a queen or stop the breath of a king. She needs it for the convulsions. She needs it for the mothers whose bodies have become a cage of twitching muscles. She harvests only the leaves. She handles them with the reverence of a priest handling a relic. She is building a bridge. On one side is the agony of the human condition. On the other side is the relief provided by the earth, and she is the only one who knows the path across. But the forest is not empty tonight. She hears it, a snap of a dry branch. It is a sound that does not belong to an animal. An animal moves with a purpose that involves hunger or fear. This sound was heavy. It was the sound of a boot. It was the sound of a man who is trying to be quiet, but does not know how to speak to the woods. She freezes. She drops to her stomach, pressing her face into the cold, wet moss. She breathes through her nose, shallow and slow. She becomes a part of the shadows. She thinks of the village. She thinks of the 40%. She thinks of the mounds in the churchyard. If she is caught here, the knowledge dies with her. The patterns she has observed, the cycles of the moon, the balance of the roots, all of it will be burned in the same fire that consumes her flesh. The women of the village will be left with nothing but the prayers of a man who fears their bodies. They will be left with the cold iron of the barber surgeons who will cut them open like cattle. She is not just a woman in the woods. She is a living library. She is a repository of 1,000 years of female observation. The footsteps come closer. They stop. She can hear the heavy, wet breathing of someone who is out of their element. She can smell the incense. It is him. Father Thomas did not stay in his stone house. He followed the trail of the blood. He followed the suspicion that has been rotting in his gut since he first saw the midwife defy him. He is standing 10 paces away. He is holding a lantern, but he has the shutter closed, trying to use the moonlight to catch her in the act. He wants to see her dancing. He wants to see her chanting. He wants to see the devil. But all he sees is the dark. He speaks a word in Latin, a blessing of protection. It sounds brittle and small against the vast silence of the ancient trees. He is terrified. He believes the stories he tells the peasants. He believes that at any moment the trees will turn into claws and the earth will swallow him whole. His fear is her weapon. She waits. She counts her heartbeats. 100, 200, 300. In the silence, the power shifts. In the village, Thomas is a giant. In the woods, he is a child. He does not know which berries will kill him. He does not know which path leads back to the road. He is a man of books in a world of thorns. Eventually, the fear wins. He turns. He begins to scramble back toward the light of the village, his robes catching on the brambles, his breathing coming in panicked gasps. He will go back to the church. He will pray for strength, and then he will begin to write the accusations. The midwife stands up. She brushes the dirt from her cloak. She does not feel relief. She feels the inevitability of the end. The secret garden is no longer a secret. The invisible war has found its first battlefield. She finishes her harvest. She gathers the mugwort. She gathers the dried lavender. She gathers the white willow bark for the fevers. She packs them into her pouch, organizing them by weight and scent. She looks up at the sky. The stars are shifting. The great bear is turning toward the horizon. The time of the birth is over, but the time of the plague is beginning. She knows that the herbs in her bag can stop a hemorrhage. She knows they can dull a pain. But she also knows they cannot stop the Black Death. She has seen the boils. She has seen the black spots. She has seen the way the air itself seems to turn into poison. She realizes that her secret garden is about to be tested in a way that history has never seen. She is not just fighting for the mothers anymore. She is fighting for the village. She is fighting for the very survival of her species. And she is doing it while being hunted by the people she is trying to save. That is the paradox of the midwife. She is the healer who is called a murderer. She is the scientist who is called a dreamer. She is the woman who holds the light while the world tries to blow it out. She begins the walk back, not to her hut. Not yet. She goes to the stone bridge at the edge of the parish. She has to hide the harvest. She cannot take it into the village, not with Thomas watching the door. She finds a loose stone in the foundation of the bridge. She tucks the pouch deep into the darkness, away from the damp and the rats. She covers it with a handful of dead leaves. She stands on the bridge and looks at the water. It is black and silent. It flows toward the sea, carrying the filth and the secrets of the land. She looks at her hands. They are clean now. The rain has washed away the blood, but she can still feel it. She can still feel the heat of the life she pulled from the dark. 1 in 3. 40%. The numbers don't lie. But tonight, for one mother and one child, the numbers were wrong. She has won the first skirmish. But the war is just beginning. And the next time she enters the village, she won't be carrying a knife. She will be carrying a destiny. Before we see what happens when the husband returns with the water, we have to look at the ritual. We have to look at the one thing the midwife did that no one else saw. The one act that defines her life and her death. The sun is coming. The shadow of the cross is stretching across the valley, and the midwife is ready. The midwife returns to the village just as the first sliver of gray light begins to peel the darkness away from the horizon. She does not take the road. The road belongs to the guards and the gossipers. She moves through the back gardens, through the mud of the pig pens, her boots sinking into the filth that never seems to dry. The pouch is hidden beneath the loose stone of the bridge. Her hands are empty. Her heart is not. She reaches the hut. The door is slightly ajar, a bad sign. In 1348, a closed door is the only armor a poor man has. An open door is an invitation for the wind, the wolves, and the law. She pushes it open. The husband is back. He is standing by the hearth, holding a bucket of water that is mostly ice. He looks at her. He looks at her hands. He is looking for the knife. She says nothing. She goes straight to the bed. Elspeth is awake. Her face is the color of old parchment, translucent and brittle. But her eyes are open. That is the first victory. In this room, the simple act of opening your eyes is a defiance of gravity. The midwife reaches out and touches the mother's forehead. It is cool. Too cool. The transition from the heat of the labor to the chill of the aftermath is the second killing field. Now the rituals begin, but they are not the rituals the priest would recognize. The midwife takes the water from the husband. She does not use it to drink. She pours a small amount of wine into a wooden bowl, mixing it with the water and a handful of salt. Salt is expensive. Salt is a luxury. To the husband, using salt on a baby is a spiritual protection. He thinks the midwife is warding off the fairies who steal children in the night. He thinks the salt makes the skin too bitter for the devil to lick. The midwife lets him believe it. She knows the salt cleans the skin. She knows the wine stops the rot. She does not have the word for infection, but she has the memory of the smell. She has smelled the sweet, cloying scent of a body turning against itself. She knows that the women who are washed with the wine and the salt are the ones who get to walk out of the hut. She picks up the infant. It is tiny. It is a miracle of bone and skin. She begins the rub. This is the ritual of the salt. She rubs the coarse grains over the baby's chest, its limbs, its back. The baby cries. It is a sharp, angry sound. Good. An angry baby is a baby that wants to stay in the world. A silent baby is a baby that is already halfway back to the shadows. As she turns the child, she sees it again. The mark. It is on the small of the back. A birthmark in the shape of a jagged sun. It matches the signet ring she saw years ago. The memory flashes back. A man on a black horse. A man who didn't speak to the peasants. A man whose presence felt like a cold wind through a summer field. She realizes that this child is not the husband's. She realizes that the husband's prayers in the corner were even more tragic than she thought. He is praying for a child that belongs to the very class of men who tax him into starvation. She covers the mark quickly. She wraps the baby in linen that has been scorched over the fire to kill the damp. This is another ritual, the ritual of the fire cloth. The village thinks the fire drives away the invisible spirits of the air. The midwife knows the heat keeps the shivering sickness away. She looks at the husband. He is watching her with a mixture of awe and terror. He sees her as a bridge. He sees her as a woman who can walk into the dark and come back with a soul. He does not see the biology. He does not see the exhaustion. He sees a ghost who eats bread. She speaks to him for the first time. Her voice is a rasp, a sound made of dust and years. She tells him to go to the well. She tells him to bring more wood. She tells him to stay away from the church for 3 days. He hesitates. Why stay away from the church? The church is where the protection is. The church is where the bells are. She leans in. She puts a hand on his shoulder. Her grip is surprisingly strong. She tells him that the air in the church is heavy. She tells him that the plague follows the incense. She is trying to save him from the crowds. She is trying to save him from the very place that promises him salvation. He nods, though he does not understand. He leaves. The midwife turns back to Elspeth. She reaches into her hidden pocket, the one the priest didn't find. She pulls out a small piece of dried honeycomb. She places it on Elspeth's tongue. Energy, sugar, the alchemy of the bee. She begins the third ritual, the ritual of the secret cord. She takes a piece of silk thread, dyed red. She ties it around the mother's wrist. To anyone else, it is a charm against the evil eye. To the midwife, it is a tension gauge. If the wrist swells, if the thread gets too tight, the fever is coming. It is her early warning system. The room is quiet now. The only sound is the rhythmic breathing of the mother and the soft, wet smacking of the baby's lips. This is the eye of the storm. The midwife sits on a 3-legged stool. She lets her head fall back against the mud wall. Her eyes close for a second. Just a second. In that second, she sees them. The 40%. They are standing in the room with her. They are the silent observers. They are the women who didn't get the salt. They are the women who didn't get the wine. They are the ones who were left to the prayers of the priest and the iron of the surgeons. They are not ghosts. They are memories. And they are the reason she cannot stop. She opens her eyes. The light is stronger now. The sun is a pale, sickly yellow behind the clouds. She hears the bell again. It is not the death bell this time. It is the alarm bell. A cry goes up from the street. It is a sound of pure, unadulterated panic. It is the sound of a village that has finally seen the boils. The Black Death has stopped knocking. It has broken down the door. The midwife stands up. Her joints pop like dry twigs. She looks at Elspeth. She looks at the child with the jagged sun on its back. She knows that the rituals of survival are about to get much more complicated. She knows that the salt and the wine will not be enough to stop the plague. She goes to the window. It is just a small slit in the mud. She sees a cart. It is already moving through the street. It is not carrying grain. It is not carrying wool. It is carrying the first of the day's harvest. The driver is shouting, "Bring out your dead. Bring out your dead." The midwife feels a coldness in her gut that has nothing to do with the winter air. She looks at the red thread on Elspeth's wrist. She looks at the scorched linen on the child. She is the only one who knows that the plague is not a punishment from God. She is the only one who has noticed that it travels with the rats and the fleas. She has seen the patterns in the grain stores. She has seen the way the sick houses are always the ones with the most vermin. But who would listen to an old woman with bloody hands? The priest will say it is the Jews. The priest will say it is the witches. The priest will say it is the alignment of the planets. He will offer processions. He will offer flagellation. He will gather hundreds of people together in the square, making it easier for the invisible poison to jump from one body to the next. He will accelerate the end while claiming to stop it. The midwife has to make a choice. Does she stay in this hut and protect the one life she just saved? Or does she go out into that street and try to fight a monster that has no face? She looks at the baby with the mark of a king and the status of a peasant. If this child lives, it could change the village. It could change the lineage. But if the plague takes it, it is just another mound in the churchyard. She hears footsteps outside, rapid, heavy. There is a bang on the door. Not a creak, a bang. The midwife reaches for the curved knife. She hides it in the folds of her skirt. The door flies open. It is not the husband. It is not the priest. It is a man in a leather mask. The beak of the mask is long and sharp, filled with herbs that he thinks will protect him. His eyes are hidden behind glass circles. He looks like a bird from a nightmare. He is the plague doctor. He looks at the midwife. He looks at the bed. He doesn't ask about the birth. He doesn't ask about the mother. He only asks one thing. Are there any spots? The midwife stands in front of the bed. She is smaller than him. She is older than him. But she does not move. She tells him no. She tells him the house is clean. The man in the mask doesn't believe her. He moves forward with a wooden cane, reaching out to lift the covers. This is the next battle. The battle between the new authority of the state and the ancient authority of the midwife. The room is full of the smell of the vinegar in his mask. It clashes with the smell of the wine on the floor. It is the smell of the world changing. The midwife grips the handle of the knife. She knows that if she lets him touch the mother will be taken to the pest house. And no one comes back from the pest house. She looks him in the glass eyes. She speaks with a clarity that cuts through the fog of his fear. "Step back," she says. The man with the beak hesitates. He sees something in her face that he doesn't see in his books. He sees the 40%. He sees the woman who has walked through the fire and didn't burn. The silence in the room is a weapon. And then, from the bed, the baby begins to cry. It is a loud, healthy, defiant scream. The man in the mask stops. He looks at the bundle. In a world of death, the sound of a new life is like a physical blow. He turns. He leaves without another word. The midwife exhales, but she knows this is just a temporary reprieve. The doctor will be back. The priest will be back. The plague will be back. She goes back to the stool. She picks up a piece of the red silk thread. She begins to tie another knot, one for the life, one for the secret, and one for the war to come. The rituals of survival are no longer enough. Now, she needs a miracle of her own making. The water in the village well is heavy. It is not just the weight of the liquid. It is the weight of the silence that surrounds it. In 1348, the well is the heart of the village. It is the only place where the lines of the social order begin to blur. It is where the servants of the manor rub shoulders with the wives of the farmers. and it is where the most dangerous thing in Europe is exchanged. It is not the plague. It is information. The midwife stands at the edge of the stone circle. She does not speak. She does not have to. She watches the way the other women move. She looks at the way a mother grips the handle of her bucket. She looks at the redness of a young girl's eyes. She is reading the village like a map. This is the sisterhood. History calls it gossip. The church calls it a sin of the tongue. They tell the men that women talk too much, that their words are empty, that their conversations are nothing but vanity and malice. That is the first great lie of the Middle Ages. The talk at the well is not vanity. It is a survival manual. Listen to the whispers. They are not talking about the weather. They are talking about the symptoms. One woman mentions that her neighbor's son has a swelling in his neck. Another woman mentions that the baker is coughing blood. A third woman whispers about a strange merchant who arrived last night with a cargo of silk and a fever that looks like fire. The midwife absorbs it all. She is a data processor. She is taking these fragments of news and building a predictive model of the plague's path. She knows which houses to avoid. She knows which families need the vinegar and the salt before they even know they are sick. This is the underground intelligence network. In a world where women are forbidden from holding office, forbidden from preaching, and forbidden from practicing law, they have built their own government in the shadows of the laundry stream and the steam of the communal ovens. The church fears this. Father Thomas stands on the steps of the stone church, watching the well. He sees the women leaning toward each other. He sees the way they touch wrists and exchange small, wrapped bundles. He sees a conspiracy. And he is right. It is a conspiracy of mercy. One woman passes a small loaf of bread to another. To the priest, it is charity. To the midwife, who prepared the loaf, it is a delivery system. Inside that bread is a mixture of willow bark and honey. It is for a grandmother who is dying of the shaking chills. It is medicine disguised as food, because if the guards find the herbs, the family will be accused of sorcery. This is the contrast bridge. The church provides the ritual of the last rites. They provide the comfort of the grave. The sisterhood provides the possibility of the morning. Think about the psychology of this network. It is built on absolute trust in a world of absolute betrayal. If one woman breaks, if one woman tells her husband or her confessor about the herbs or the secret births, the entire structure collapses. The noose tightens for everyone. Yet they do not break. Why? Because they have seen the alternative. They have seen the professional doctors. They have seen the men who come in their long robes, carrying their ivory boxes and their astrological charts. These men do not talk to the women. They talk to the husbands. They talk to the heads of the household. They treat the female body like a broken machine that they are too proud to touch. The midwife is the opposite. She is the body. She is the touch. She moves away from the well. She has what she needs. She knows the plague has crossed the bridge. She knows the north alley is already lost. As she walks back toward her hut, she is followed by a shadow. Not the shadow of a man, the shadow of a fear. She passes a house where the door has been marked with a red cross. Behind that door, she can hear a sound. It is not a scream. It is a low, rhythmic chanting. It is the sound of the flagellants. These are the men who believe the plague can be stopped by pain. They move through the streets in lines, whipping their own backs with leather thongs tipped with iron spikes. They believe that if they suffer enough, God will stay his hand. They believe that blood can wash away the air. The midwife looks at them. She sees the wounds. She sees the filth on the whips. She knows that these men are not stopping the plague. They are spreading it. They are moving from village to village, their open sores dripping into the dust, their panic infecting the minds of everyone who watches. This is the collision of two ideologies, the masculine ideology of penance and the feminine ideology of preservation. The men want to bleed for the afterlife. The women want to wash for the present. The midwife speeds her pace. She has a second birth tonight. A woman named Martha, the wife of the blacksmith. Martha is older. Her body is tired. She has had 6 children. Only 2 are still breathing. She knows the odds. She knows the 40%. When the midwife enters the blacksmith's house, the air is different. It doesn't smell like the hut of Elspeth. It smells of iron and soot. The blacksmith is a big man, a man who can bend horseshoes with his bare hands, but he is sitting on the floor, his head in his hands, trembling. He is useless. The fire of his forge is hot, but his heart is cold. The midwife ignores him. She goes to Martha. Martha is not screaming. She is silent. She is saving her energy for the struggle. She looks at the midwife, and there is a look of recognition between them. It is the look of 2 soldiers who have been in the same trench for 20 years. There are no words. There are only the rituals. The midwife begins to boil the water. She adds the dried lavender to the steam. She wants to calm the air. She wants to clear the smell of the forge. But as she works, she feels a presence. She turns. In the window, she sees a face. It is not Father Thomas. It is one of the village elders, a man who lost his wife to the fever last month. He is watching. He is looking for a reason to blame his loss on someone else. This is the micro-insight of the hunted. You are never alone. Every success you have is a threat to those who have failed. If the midwife saves Martha, she is proving that the elder's wife didn't have to die. She is proving that the priest's prayers weren't the only answer. And in a world of grief, proof is a dangerous thing. The midwife turns her back to the window. She uses her body to block the view. She begins the internal examination. The baby is positioned wrong. It is sideways, a transverse lie. In 1348, this is a death sentence. The doctors would tell the husband to choose between the mother and the child. They would use hooks. They would use saws. They would leave a carnage that no one could clean up. The midwife does not reach for a hook. She reaches for the oil. She has a bottle of almond oil, brought from the south by a merchant who owed her a favor. It is worth more than the blacksmith's forge. She pours it onto her hands. She begins the version. This is the secret technique of the sisterhood. It is the art of turning the child inside the womb. It requires a knowledge of anatomy that is not found in any book. It requires a sense of touch that can distinguish between a shoulder and a hip through 3 layers of muscle and skin. It is a slow, agonizing process. Martha's face turns blue. She grips the edge of the wooden frame until her fingernails bleed. The midwife doesn't stop. She talks to the baby. She whispers to the muscles. She uses the rhythm of her own breath to guide the movements. Outside, the bells are still tolling. The flagellants are still whipping. The world is screaming for death. But in this room, there is only the sound of a woman's hands working in the dark. The tension is a physical weight. The blacksmith looks up. He sees the midwife's sweat. He sees the blood. He sees the struggle. And then, a click. Not a sound, but a feeling. The child shifts. The head slides into the pelvis. The bridge is crossed. The midwife exhales a breath she didn't know she was holding. She looks at the window. The elder is gone. The shadow has moved on. But she knows he didn't go home to sleep. He went to find the others. The sisterhood is strong, but the fear of the village is stronger. The plague is driving people to madness. They are looking for a scapegoat. They are looking for someone to pay for the black spots on their children's skin. The midwife looks at Martha. The labor is moving fast now. The body knows what to do once the path is clear. But the midwife's mind is already on the next problem. She thinks of the child with the jagged sun on its back. She thinks of the priest's suspicion. She thinks of the plague doctor's beak. She realizes that the network is fraying. The talk at the well is becoming darker. The trust is being replaced by the desperate need to survive. She knows that tonight might be the last time she can move through the gardens in secret. She knows that the noose is being prepared. But she has one more secret, the biggest secret of all. It is something she found in the old texts, the one she stole from the ruins of the monastery during the last famine. It is a map, not of the village, not of the forest. It is a map of the blood. Before the sun rises on Martha's new child, the midwife will have to decide if she is willing to share that map. She will have to decide if the sisterhood can handle the truth about the plague. Because the truth is not in the stars. It is not in the sins. The truth is in the rats. And once you know the truth, you can never go back to being just a midwife. You become a target. The screaming starts again. But this time, it is a cry of life. The baby is born. A girl. The midwife cleans her with the salt. She wraps her in the scorched linen. She gives her to Martha. She does not wait for thanks. She does not wait for payment. She goes to the door. She looks at the street. The cart is coming. The driver is still shouting. The midwife pulls her cloak tight. She has one more stop to make before the world burns down. She has to go to the manor. She has to see the man with the signet ring, because the plague doesn't care about kings. But the midwife does. Stay with me, because the invisible war is about to become very, very visible. The manor house does not sit on the land. It looms over it. It is a structure of gray stone and cold ambition, perched on the highest hill like a bird of prey, waiting for the world to die. To the village, this is the seat of power. To the midwife, as she climbs the winding path in the pre-dawn mist, it is a tomb. She can feel the change in the air as she leaves the mud of the commons behind. Here, the air smells of expensive wax, dry cedar, and the sharp, acidic tang of wine that has never seen a wooden cup. She stops at the gate. The iron is cold, slick with the sweat of the fog. She does not knock. She waits. She knows that in this house, movement is tracked by eyes that never blink. This is the bishop's eye. History likes to tell us that the Inquisition was a sudden explosion of madness. They tell us it was a fever that swept through Europe, a collective hallucination of demons and brooms. That is the second great lie. The Inquisition was not madness. It was an audit. It was an administrative expansion of a corporation that was losing its grip on the souls of the living. Think about the timing. 1348. The plague is erasing the tax base. The tithes are drying up. The people are realizing that the relics in the cathedrals are just old bones that cannot stop a fever. When the church loses its ability to protect, it pivots. It begins to hunt. The midwife is led inside. The silence of the manor is different from the silence of the hut. In the hut, silence is the absence of noise. In the manor, Silence is a weapon. It is the sound of people holding their breath, waiting for a command. She is led through corridors where the tapestries tell stories of martyrs being torn apart by lions and saints burning in oil. The message is clear. Suffering is the only path to the light. She reaches the great hall. At the far end, near a fireplace that could roast an entire ox, sits the man. He is not wearing the beak of the plague doctor. He is wearing silk, red silk, the color of blood that has been filtered through a treasury. This is Bishop Valerius. He is the man who owns the signet ring. He does not look up when she enters. He is reading a ledger. He is counting. He is a man of the 40%, but from the other side. He is not counting the dead to mourn them. He is counting the lost revenue. The midwife stands in the center of the hall. Her cloak is damp. Her boots leave small, dark stains of village mud on the polished stone. She is an infection in this sterile world. Valerius speaks without looking at her. His voice is smooth, like oil poured over marble. He asks about the birth at the blacksmith's. He asks about the child with the jagged sun on its back. He is not asking because he cares about the child's soul. He is asking because that mark is a map of his own transgression. Here is the pattern interrupt. You expect the midwife to be afraid. You expect her to tremble. But she does not. She looks at the bishop's hand. She sees the ring. This was not a coincidence. This was not a random act of a traveling man. The bishop is the father of the child in the hut. The bishop, the man who preaches the sanctity of the flesh and the sin of the womb, has left his mark on the village mud. The midwife uses the first rule of the shadow. Knowledge is only power if you are willing to burn with it. She speaks. She does not use his title. She tells him the child is healthy. She tells him the mark is clear. She tells him that the village is talking. The bishop stops reading. The room goes cold. The fire in the hearth seems to lose its heat. He looks at her. His eyes are not the eyes of a priest. They are the eyes of a man who has ordered cities to be leveled. He tells her that the plague is a gift. He tells her that the black spots are the erasers of God. He says that soon there will be no village left to talk. There will be no blacksmith. There will be no midwife. There will only be the church, standing on the ashes, rebuilding the world in a shape that suits the ledger. This is the reframe. The plague is not a tragedy to him. It is an opportunity. It is the ultimate social cleansing. The midwife realizes that Father Thomas is just a dog on a leash. The real predator is the man in the red silk. He is the one who directed the plague doctor to the village. He is the one who wants the unclean elements removed before the new era begins. But the midwife has a counter move. She reaches into her tunic and pulls out a small piece of parchment. It is the map of the blood. She tells him that she has tracked the fever. She tells him she knows why the manor has stayed safe while the village burns. It isn't the prayers. It isn't the incense. It is the water. The manor has its own spring, deep in the rock. The village uses the well. She has seen the rats at the well. She has seen the fleas in the grain. She tells him that if he moves against her, she will go to the square. She will tell the flagellants that the bishop is hoarding the clean water. She will tell them that the plague is not a sin, but a choice made by the men in the red silk. Think about the stakes. If the flagellants hear this, they will not whip themselves anymore. They will whip the manor. They will turn their iron spikes toward the gray stone. The bishop laughs. It is a dry, rattling sound. He asks her who would believe a witch. He asks her who would listen to a woman with blood on her sleeves when the world is ending. He stands up. He is a head taller than her. He smells of rosemary and power. He tells her that he has already signed the decree. The Inquisition is coming to the parish. Not in a month, not in a week. They are at the gates now. He points to the window. In the distance, through the mist, she sees the torches, a line of fire moving toward the village. These are not the local guards. These are the specialists, the men who know how to extract a confession from a stone. The midwife feels the noose for the first time. It is not made of rope. It is made of the law. But she has one more secret. She leans in, so close she can smell the wine on his breath. She tells him that if she dies, the child dies. She tells him she has fed the infant a slow-acting tincture, a mixture of the secret garden. It requires a daily dose of the antidote hidden in the midwife's hut. If she does not return, the jagged sun will go dark. The bishop's only legacy, the only proof of his humanity, will be buried in the mud before the sun sets. This is the high-stakes gamble. She has turned the child into a hostage. She has become the very monster the church claims she is. The bishop's face contorts. The mask of the holy man cracks. He reaches for her throat. But a bell rings. It is a sharp, insistent chime from the corridor. A messenger enters. He is covered in dust. He is shaking. He falls to his knees. He tells the bishop that the Inquisition guards have stopped. They are not entering the village. Why? Because the captain of the guard has just collapsed. He has a swelling under his arm the size of an apple. He is coughing black blood. The plague does not care about decrees. The plague does not care about the bishop's eye. It has found the specialists. The midwife looks at the bishop. The power in the room has shifted again. The red silk is no longer a shield. It is just a shroud waiting to be used. She tells him that the guards will be dead by morning. She tells him the Inquisition is over before it began. She turns to leave. She does not wait for his permission. She walks through the corridors of martyrs. She walks past the tapestries of pain. As she reaches the heavy oak door, she looks back. The bishop is sitting in his chair, staring at his signet ring. He is alone. The silence of the manor is no longer a weapon. It is a vacuum. The midwife steps out into the mist. She has won the hour, but she has lost the village. The fire is still coming, but now it is the fire of the fever, not the law. She has to get back to the hut. She has to find the child. She has to find the husband. But as she descends the hill, she sees something that stops her heart. The well in the center of the village is glowing. Someone has thrown a torch into the water. Someone is screaming about the Jews. Someone is screaming about the witches. The sisterhood is breaking. The chaos has arrived. She begins to run. Her knees ache. Her breath is a fire in her lungs. She realizes that the bishop was right about one thing. The world is ending. But he was wrong about the rest. The end of the world is not an audit. It is a riot. And the midwife is the only one who knows the way out of the burning house. Stay with me, because we are about to enter the heart of the Black Death. We are about to see what happens when the midwife becomes the plague's only opponent. The torches are getting closer. The screaming is getting louder, and the child is still waiting for the antidote that doesn't exist. That was her final lie. And in 1348, a lie is often the only thing that can save a life. The air has changed. It is no longer just cold. It is heavy. It is thick with the smell of scorched hair and wet ash. As the midwife descends from the manor, she does not see the village she left just hours ago. She sees a vision of the end. The silence is the first thing that hits you. It is not the silence of sleep. It is the silence of a held breath. The streets are empty, but the houses are full of noise. You hear it behind the shutters, a low, rhythmic moaning, the sound of people whose bodies have become their own torture chambers. This is the Black Death. This is not a story. This is a massacre. In 1348, the plague did not arrive with a drumbeat. It arrived with a flea. It arrived with a rat. It arrived with the invisible. And in 3 days, it turned a functioning society into a frantic, clawing pit of survival. The midwife is running now. Her breath is a jagged knife in her chest. She passes the first row of cottages. Every single door is marked. Some have the red cross of the guards. Others have been smeared with mud and filth by neighbors trying to seal the infection inside. Think about the psychology of the marked door. In the morning, you are a neighbor. You are the man who shares the plow. You are the woman who trades the eggs. By evening, you are a biological weapon. Your touch is a death sentence. Your breath is a sin. The village has turned on itself. The sisterhood at the well is gone. It has been replaced by the suspicion of the gutter. She reaches her own hut. The door is hanging off one hinge. She stops. She listens. No screaming. No crying. She enters. The room is dark. The fire has gone out, leaving only a cold, gray pile of ash in the hearth. She calls out for Elspeth. She calls out for the husband. In the corner, she sees a shape. It is the husband. He is sitting on the floor, but he is not praying anymore. His eyes are wide, fixed on the ceiling. He is scratching his neck. His fingers are stained with a dark, oily fluid. He looks at her, but he does not see her. He tells her that the priest was right. He tells her the sky is falling. The midwife moves to the bed. Elspeth is there, clutching the infant. Her face is flushed, her skin radiating a heat that you can feel from a foot away. The red silk thread on her wrist is buried in the swelling of her flesh. The early warning system is screaming. The fever has arrived. But the midwife does not panic. Panic is a luxury for the dying. She is a soldier. She looks at the baby. The child is still, too still. She peels back the linen. No spots, not yet. But the air in the hut is poisoned. Every second they stay here, they are breathing in the invisible. She knows she cannot save the husband. He is already too far gone. She sees the buboes under his jaw, the size of eggs, turning a bruised, necrotic purple. She has to make the hardest choice of the night. She goes to the husband. She puts a hand on his forehead. It is a gesture of mercy, but also a gesture of farewell. She tells him to stay. She tells him to keep praying. Then she turns to Elspeth. She tells her they are leaving. Now. Elspeth cannot walk. The labor and the fever have turned her bones to water. The midwife does not hesitate. She is an old woman, but her strength is fueled by the 40%. She is not just carrying a mother and a child. She is carrying the weight of all the women she has ever lost. She wraps them both in a heavy wool cloak. She ignores the husband's whimpering. She steps back out into the street. The village is burning. Someone has set fire to the grain store. They think the fire will clean the air. They are wrong. The fire is only providing more light for the horror. She sees a group of men. They are not flagellants. They are the village elders, the men of the law. They are carrying torches and clubs. They are looking for the source. They are looking for the witch who brought the curse. They see her. 1 in 3. That was the number for birth. But the number for the plague? 2 in 3. In this village of 200 people, 130 will be dead before the moon is full. The elders know this. They feel the mathematics of extinction, and they need someone to pay the bill. The midwife ducks into the alleyway. She knows every shortcut, every hidden path through the mud. She is a shadow moving through a furnace. She is heading for the bridge. She is heading for the secret garden. But as she reaches the edge of the commons, she sees him. Father Thomas. He is standing in the middle of the road. He is not wearing his robes. He is wearing a simple tunic, stained with sweat. He is holding a crucifix in one hand and a heavy iron key in the other. He is not looking for the devil anymore. He is looking for a way out. He sees the midwife. He sees the bundle in her arms. He knows about the child with the mark. He knows about the bishop's transgression. He speaks, and his voice is broken. He asks her if she has the antidote. He asks her if the secret garden has a cure for the black spots. This is the reversal. The man of God is begging the witch for science. The midwife stops. She looks him in the eye. The fire from the grain store reflects in her pupils. She tells him the truth. There is no cure for the spots. There is only the distance. There is only the clean water and the cold wind. Thomas doesn't believe her. He thinks she is hoarding the life. He moves toward her, his hand reaching for the bundle. He tells her that if he dies, everyone dies. He says the child belongs to the church. He says the bishop's blood must be preserved at all costs. He is no longer a priest. He is a scavenger. The midwife shifts the weight of Elspeth and the child. She feels the curved knife against her thigh. The choice is here. Does she kill the man of God to save the child of the sin? The screaming in the village gets louder. The elders are coming. The fire is spreading. The midwife looks at the bridge. It is only 50 paces away. Behind it, the forest. Behind the forest, the unknown. She looks at Thomas. She sees the fear in his soul. It is a pathetic, small thing. She does not use the knife. She uses the truth. She leans in and whispers into his ear. She tells him that the bishop is already dead. She tells him that the manor is a tomb. She tells him that his key opens a door to a house of ghosts. Thomas freezes. The lie is a physical blow. His world, the structure he built his life on, collapses in a single sentence. He drops the key. He drops the cross. He falls to his knees in the mud. The midwife does not wait for him to recover. She runs. She crosses the bridge. She reaches the stone. She pulls the pouch of herbs from its hiding place. She does not look back at the village. She does not look back at the fire. She enters the forest. The darkness of the trees swallows them. The smell of the smoke fades, replaced by the scent of damp earth and ancient pine. They are safe for the moment, but the fever is still in Elspeth's blood. The secret is still on the child's back, and the world they knew is gone forever. The midwife finds a hollow under a fallen oak. She lays Elspeth down. She unwraps the child. The baby opens its eyes. They are clear. They are bright. They are the only things in this world that are not covered in ash. The midwife realizes that the war has changed. It is no longer about survival in the village. It is about building something new in the ruins. But to do that, she has to survive the night. She reaches into the pouch. She pulls out the white willow bark. She begins to chew. She is the only doctor left in the world. And the patient is the future. The numbers are still there. 40%, 1 in 3, 2 in 3. But tonight, the only number that matters is 1. 1 child, 1 secret, 1 chance. The invisible war has just become a journey, and the destination is a place where the bishop's eye cannot see and the priest's bell cannot ring. The sun is coming. But this time, it is a different kind of light. Janro Thuachi. Imsiting Chin Dung Luong Shuang Mok approximately 800 to Chomoy Fan. Jai Lajo Dai Vang Jegutok Jodon Dap. Hipungwoing Hifai Tap Trung Vao Tung Hipto Kwan Hanvat Ma Kong Ko Le Mod Giai Tua Tai. Doi Jai La Fan 9. Birth in the Ruins. Van Bantuan Gyong Jok, Kong Kitu Jak Biet, Kong Tio Je. The hollow of a fallen oak tree is not a home. It is a coffin made of bark and rot. But tonight, it is the only fortress left in Europe. Outside, the wind howls through the canopy, a sound like 1,000 mourners. Inside, there is only the smell of damp earth and the heavy, sweet scent of a fever that has no name. Elspeth is dying. The midwife can feel the heat radiating from the mother's skin. It is a dry, angry heat. It is the heat of a body that has given everything it has and is now burning the leftovers. The red silk thread on Elspeth's wrist is no longer a warning. It is a restraint. The flesh has swollen so much that the thread is cutting into the skin, leaving a thin line of bruised purple. 1 in 3. The numbers don't change just because you are in the woods. The midwife looks at her hands. They are cracked, the fingernails caked with the mud of the escape and the blood of the birth. She has no clean water. She has no wine. She has only the pouch of herbs and the knowledge that she is losing. This is the contrast bridge. In the village, they are burning incense to clear the air. They are whipping their backs to appease a god they think is angry. They are looking for magic. But here, under the roots of a dead tree, the midwife is looking for biology. She pulls out the white willow bark. She doesn't have a bowl to grind it. She uses her teeth. She chews the bitter wood, mixing it with her own saliva until it becomes a paste. It is the oldest medicine in the world. It is the ancestor of aspirin, pulled from the dirt by a woman who is being hunted for the crime of knowing it exists. She presses the paste against Elspeth's tongue. She whispers to her. She tells her to swallow the forest. She tells her to take the strength of the tree. Then she turns to the baby. The infant is awake. It does not cry. It watches the shadows shift on the roof of the hollow. The jagged sun mark on its back seems to glow in the dim light of the pre-dawn. It is a mark of high birth, a mark of power. But here, it is just a target. The midwife feels a surge of a feeling she has suppressed for 40 years. It is not pity. It is rage. She is angry at the bishop in his red silk. She is angry at Father Thomas and his iron keys. She is angry at a world that allows a child to be born in the mud, while the men who cause the suffering sit in stone halls and count their coins. She realizes that this child is her revenge. If she can keep this secret breathing, if she can move this jagged sun out of the reach of the bishop's eye, she will have committed the ultimate heresy. She will have stolen the future. But the future is cold. She hears a sound. It is not the wind. It is a rhythmic crunching of dry leaves. It is slow. It is deliberate. Someone is tracking them. It is not the guards. The guards are dead or dying in their boots. It is not the elders. They are too busy guarding their own doors. This is a hunter. She reaches for the curved knife. She does not hide it this time. She holds it in front of her, the steel catching the first blue light of the morning. A shadow falls across the opening of the hollow. It is tall. It is lean. It carries a longbow the wood polished by years of use. It is the man from the blacksmith's window, the elder who lost his wife. He does not look angry. He looks empty. He looks like a man who has realized that the prayers didn't work and the fire didn't work, and now he only has one thing left to do. He wants to see the source. He looks at the midwife. He looks at the knife. He looks at the mother, shivering in the dirt. He asks her if it's true. He asks if the plague is in the water. The midwife doesn't lie. She tells him yes. She tells him the rats and the fleas carry the shadow. She tells him that his wife didn't die because of sin. She died because of a flea. The man stops. The bow drops an inch. The information is a physical weight. To tell a man in 1348 that his grief is caused by an insect is more shocking than telling him it was caused by a demon. A demon has a purpose. A flea is just an accident. He asks her why she is here, why she didn't stay to save the village. She tells him the truth again. She tells him she can't save the village from the plague. She can only save the child from the men. The elder looks at the baby. He sees the mark. He is a village man. He knows the signs. He recognizes the jagged sun. He knows who the father is. The silence between them is the sound of a world breaking. He reaches into his belt and pulls out a small, dried piece of salted meat. He tosses it into the hollow. He doesn't say a word. He turns and walks back into the mist. He is not going to report her. He is going to wait for the end. The midwife picks up the meat. She doesn't eat it. She gives it to Elspeth, forcing her to chew, forcing the life back into the muscle. The sun rises. It is a pale, weak thing, but it is the morning. The midwife looks at the baby. The child is watching her. For the first time, it reaches out a tiny red hand and touches the scar on her palm. It is a connection. It is the 60%. She realizes that they cannot stay here. The forest is a sanctuary, but it is also a trap. They have to move. They have to find the mountain paths. They have to find the places where the air is too thin for the fleas and the law is too far for the bishop. She begins to pack the pouch. She ties the red silk thread tighter on her own wrist. The journey is just beginning, and the birth in the ruins was only the first step. Before we see what lies over the mountain, we have to look at the one thing the midwife left behind, the one item she forgot in her haste to leave the hut. It is the curved knife's sheath, and on it is her own mark. The hunt is not over. It has only just been given a scent. Stay with me, because the next part of the story is where the history ends and the legend begins. The blue light of dawn is the cruelest light. It does not warm, it only reveals. It reveals the frost on Elspeth's hair. It reveals the blue tint to the infant's fingernails, and it reveals the fear in a mother's eyes that has nothing to do with the plague. Elspeth is not looking at the trees. She is looking at the bundle in her arms. She is looking for a sign that her child is still human. In 1348, the greatest threat to a newborn was not always the fever. It was the myth. They called it the changeling. Imagine a world where your child's cry is not a call for help, but a piece of evidence. If the baby is too quiet, it is a changeling. If it eats too much, a changeling. If its eyes are too bright, or its skin too pale, or if it simply looks at you with a gaze that seems too old for its face, the village will say the fairies have been in the room. They will say the true child was stolen and replaced with a hollow thing, a demon, a creature of the woods. This was not just folklore. This was a survival strategy for a society that could not explain the broken. If a child was born with a twisted limb, it was not an accident of bone. It was a curse. If a child grew up silent, never speaking a word, it was not a mystery of the mind. It was a swap. The myth of the changeling was the bridge between a tragedy they couldn't understand and a solution they were too afraid to name. And the solution was often a cold one. To get the real child back, you had to make the fake one suffer. You left it on a shovel over a fire. You left it at the crossroads in the middle of a blizzard. You waited for the spirits to feel pity and return what was yours. They were killing their own, and they were doing it in the name of love. But the midwife? She did not see fairies. She did not see demons. She saw the 20%. 1 in 5 children was born with a mark, a stutter, or a spirit that did not fit the mold. To the church, this was the taint of original sin. To the midwife, it was a variation of life. She had seen the patterns. She knew that the mothers who worked in the lead mines had the silent babies. She knew that the fathers who were cousins had the twisted limbs. It was not magic. It was the inheritance of the flesh. She is the only one who stands between the baby and the shovel. She looks at the child with the jagged sun on its back. To a village priest, this mark is a brand of the devil, a sign that the mother made a pact in the dark. Elspeth knows this. She is trembling, her hands hovering over the child, as if she is afraid to touch it. She asks the midwife if the baby is right. She asks if the forest has changed him. The midwife does not answer immediately. She takes the child. She feels the warmth of its chest. She looks into its eyes. They are the color of a winter sea, deep, intelligent, terrifying. She speaks, and her voice is a rasp that cuts through the wind. She tells Elspeth there are no fairies here. She tells her the child is hers. She tells her that the mark is not a curse, but a crown. It is the first lie of many, but it is a necessary one. She knows that the myth of the changeling is the bishop's greatest tool. If he can label this child as a monster, he can erase the evidence of his own crime. He can turn the village's grief into a hunt. He can make the people do his work for him. But the midwife has her own ritual. She takes a piece of iron, a small nail she pulled from the blacksmith's forge. She ties it to the baby's swaddling. To Elspeth, the iron wards off the spirits. To the midwife, the iron is a reminder of the world they are trying to reclaim. It is a piece of the village, a piece of the fire. The child grabs the iron. Its grip is strong. She looks at the mother. She tells her to hold the child. She tells her that a mother's touch is the only thing that keeps a child human. She is teaching her to ignore the whispers of the church. She is teaching her to trust the blood over the book. But the loop is closing. In the distance, the bells have stopped. The village is silent. But the woods are waking up. She hears the baying of dogs, not the village curs. These are the hounds of the manor. They have a scent. The myth is coming for them, and it is wearing a collar of gold. The midwife stands up. Her joints ache. Her stomach is empty, but her mind is sharp. She realizes that to save the child, she cannot just hide. She has to become the myth herself. If they want a witch, she will give them a nightmare. She reaches into the pouch. She pulls out the belladonna. Stay with me. Because the war for the child's soul is about to move from the dirt to the mind. And the midwife is about to show the bishop that the woods have secrets that even God hasn't heard of yet. Look at her hands. They are not the hands of a woman. They are a map of a war zone. The skin is cracked like the dry earth of a drought. The joints are swollen, knotted like the roots of the ancient oak she hides under. This is the price of knowledge. You want to know the truth about the medieval healer? It is not found in the herbs, it is found in the exhaustion. The midwife has no youth. She traded it. She traded her sleep for the screams of others. She traded her reputation for the survival of strangers. For 30 years, she has walked through the mud at midnight. She has stood for 18 hours in rooms filled with the smell of copper and sweat. She has felt the life drain out of bodies she fought to save. This is the physical reality. Knowledge is a weight. It curves the spine. It clouds the eyes. But the mental price, that is the real debt. In 1348, to know is to be alone. She knows that washing hands with vinegar stops the rot. She knows that ergot stops the blood, but she cannot tell the world. To share the truth is to invite the fire. She must watch as the priest uses unwashed hands to bless the dying, effectively killing them with his holiness. She must stay silent while the barber surgeon uses a rusted blade to cut a child that could have been saved with a simple turn. The silence is the heaviest part. It is a slow poison. It makes her a ghost in her own village. People look at her with a mixture of need and hatred. They want her hands when they are dying, but they want her dead when they are well. She has no family of her own. Her only children are the 40% who did not make it, and the 60% who did. She carries their names in her bones. Every failed labor is a scar on her soul. Every successful birth is a secret she must keep from the bishop's ledgers. The price is paid in blood, in cold, and in the inevitable end. She knows the noose is coming. She felt the scent of it on Father Thomas' robes. She sees it in the eyes of the hounds. But she does not stop. Why? Because the knowledge belongs to the women. And if she dies without passing it on, the war is lost forever. But the price is about to get higher. The hounds are no longer barking in the distance. They are here. They have found the hollow. And the bishop is not looking for a child anymore. He is looking for a confession. She looks at her knife one last time. The price of knowledge is high, but the price of ignorance is the end of the world. The iron is cold against her wrists, but the fire in front of her is white hot. They have built a stage in the village square, not for a play, for an ending. Bishop Valerius sits on a throne of stolen oak. He does not look like a man of God. He looks like an accountant of agony. He asks the first question. He does not ask for the truth. He asks for the devil. Tell us his name, the bishop says. Tell us the name of the spirit that gave you the power to steal life from the grave. The midwife looks at him. Her face is a mask of stone. She does not tremble. She does not pray. She speaks a single word. Salix. The bishop freezes. The crowd murmurs. They were expecting a demon's name. They were expecting a curse. They got a plant. It is willow, she says. Her voice is like dry gravel. It is the bark of a tree. It does not have a soul. It only has a purpose. This is the trial of the century. It is not a trial of a woman. It is a trial of reality. On one side, you have the scrolls of the ancients, the Latin chants, and the belief that suffering is a divine requirement. On the other side, you have a woman who noticed that boiling water saves more lives than 1,000 rosaries. The bishop stands up. He calls it heresy. He says that to heal without a prayer is to rob God of his authority. He says that if the mother lives because of a root, she has been bought by the enemy. No prayers, no spells, no demons, just observation, just pattern, just truth. The midwife realizes the real crime. It is not that she used magic. It is that she proved magic wasn't necessary. She made the church irrelevant in the room of birth. She took the keys to the afterlife and turned them into tools for the living. The bishop signals the guards. The fire is fed. The smoke rises, thick and black, smelling of pine and pine tar. He tells the people that the plague is her fault. He tells them her knowledge is the poison. This is the ultimate reframe. The man who hoards the clean water is calling the healer a murderer. The man who failed to stop the fever is blaming the woman who fought it. But the midwife has one last card to play. She looks at the crowd. She sees the women. She sees the sisters at the well. She sees the mothers she helped in the dark. She asks them a question. Who held your hand? Who heard your scream? Who stayed when the men in robes ran away? The silence in the square is a physical weight. The fire crackles. The hounds strain at their leashes. The verdict is already written. But the message? The message is spreading like the fever. She is not a witch. She is a witness. And the bishop is terrified of what she has seen. The steel is not for healing anymore. It is for a salvage mission. Elspeth's heart has stopped. The room is a tomb of frozen breath and guttering candles. The husband is gone. The priest is waiting at the door, and the midwife stands over the cooling body with the curved knife in her hand. This is the dark anatomy, the sectio in mortua, the cut into the dead. In 1348, there is no medical grace. There is only the race against the shadow. The church has a decree. No child shall die unbaptized inside a dead womb. It is a spiritual law, but it requires a butcher's hands. The midwife feels the resistance of the skin. It is different now. The heat is gone. The elasticity is fading. She makes the first incision. No blood sprays. It just leaks, a dark and heavy fluid that pools in the straw. This is not surgery. It is an excavation. She is reaching into the silence to find a pulse that does not want to be found. Think about the stakes. If she fails to get the child out before the air is gone, she has failed the church. If she succeeds, she has performed an act that most men are too terrified to watch. This is the ultimate physical detail. The sound of the blade against the bone, the smell of the opened body, the raw, visceral reality of the human machine. The barber surgeons of the city have books about this. They have diagrams. They have Latin names for every muscle, but they are not here. They are hiding in their stone houses, waiting for the plague to pass. The midwife is the only one who knows the true map of the flesh. She has seen it. She has touched it. She has memorized the geography of survival through 1,000 failures. She reaches the womb. Her hands are deep in the crimson. She feels a movement, a small, desperate kick against her palm. The life spark is still there. She pulls. It is a slow, agonizing extraction. She is fighting the gravity of death. She is fighting the finality of the room. And then the child is out. It does not cry. It is covered in the evidence of its mother's end. The midwife clears the mouth. She breathes into the tiny lungs. 1 breath, 2 breaths. The sound breaks the silence, a reedy, fragile wail. It is a victory, but it is a hollow one. The mother is meat. The child is a hostage of the state. And the midwife is covered in the truth that the church wants to keep hidden, that life is a physical battle, not a spiritual one. She looks at her hands. They are the color of the sun setting over a battlefield. She has seen the dark anatomy. She has seen how the body is built. And she knows that once you see the machine, you can never go back to believing in the ghost. But the priest is pushing the door. He wants the child. He wants the baptism. He wants the control. The midwife has the child, but she has lost the mother. And now, She is about to lose her own soul to the secret she just pulled from the dark. The fire is small. It is just a handful of embers fighting the damp of the forest floor. The midwife is not looking at the fire. She is looking at the girl. Her name is Anne. She is 16. She has the eyes of someone who has seen too much and the hands of someone who is ready to carry more. This is the passing of the staff. It is not a ceremony. It is a burden. The midwife reaches into her leather pouch. The bag is empty of herbs now, but it is heavy with history. She takes out the curved knife. She does not hand it over. She lays it on the dirt between them. "Look at this," she says. Her voice is a whisper that carries the weight of 1,000 miles. It is not a tool for the hand. It is a tool for the mind. If you take this, you are no longer a daughter. You are no longer a neighbor. You are the wall. The girl reaches out. Her fingers tremble. She touches the cold steel. The midwife watches. This is the emotional heart of the long night. This is the 60%. She is not just giving a knife. She is giving a death sentence. She is giving the girl the power to save lives and the certainty that she will be hated for it. "You must learn the rhythm," she says. "You must learn the language of the blood. You must learn that the priest is not your enemy, but the ignorance he protects is. You will walk when others sleep. You will speak when others are silent. You will be the ghost that keeps the village breathing. No thanks, no glory, no peace." The midwife takes the girl's hand. She presses her scarred palm against the girl's fresh skin. This is the physical connection, the transfer of the data, the lineage of the shadow. She tells her about the white willow. She tells her about the ergot. She tells her about the salt and the wine. "This is not magic," she repeats. "It is the pattern. It is the truth of the machine." The girl nods. She does not ask about the risk. She does not ask about the bishop's eye. She only asks one thing. How do I know when to let go? The midwife closes her eyes. She thinks of the 40%. She thinks of the mounds in the churchyard. She thinks of Elspeth. "You never let go," she says. "You just learn to carry the weight until your back breaks. And then you find the next girl. The ritual is complete. The staff has passed. The knowledge is no longer in one head. It is in two. The risk has doubled, but so has the hope. But the morning is full of sounds. The hounds are closer. The forest is no longer a sanctuary. It is a trap that is slowly closing." The midwife stands up. She feels the finality in her bones. She has done her job. She has secured the lineage. Now, she has to face the ending. She tells the girl to take the child. She tells her to head for the mountains. She tells her not to look back. "Go," the midwife commands. The girl disappears into the mist, carrying the future in her arms. The midwife is alone. She picks up the curved knife. She stands in the center of the clearing. She waits. The first hound breaks through the brush. It is followed by the cold steel of the Inquisition. The end is here. But the secret? The secret is already miles away. The mist is cold. The forest is quiet. The hounds are no longer barking because the world is finally empty. The midwife stands at the edge of the cliff. She looks down at the village. The fires are gone. The screaming is over. There is only the silence of the 40% and the survival of the 60. You think this is a story about the past? You are wrong. This is a story about you. Look at your hands. Look at the veins under your skin. Every heartbeat in your chest is a miracle of 1,000 variables. It is a domino that almost did not fall. If one midwife, in one mud hut, in one winter of 1348, had looked at the blood and looked at the fire and decided she was too tired, you would not be here. You would not be breathing. You would not be existing. History is a lie told by the winners. It is written by the men who owned the stone cathedrals, the red silk, and the iron keys. They talk about the wars of kings and the movement of borders, but the real history, the heavy, visceral history of the human race, was written in the dirt. It was written by women with scarred hands and broken backs who decided that the ending was not good enough. They are the unsung saints. No statues, no names in the ledgers, no glory, just the continuation of the line. The midwife pulls her cloak tight. She sees the girl in the distance, climbing the mountain. She sees the child with the jagged sun on its back. The secret is safe. The science is safe. The future is breathing. She sits down. Her work is done. She does not need to run anymore. This was not a tragedy. This was an act of war, a war against death that we are still fighting today. The bishop thought he could audit the soul. The priest thought he could cage the flesh. They were both wrong. The body is the only thing that matters. The breath is the only miracle that counts. Next time you see a scar or a plant in the woods or a child's clear eyes, remember the 40%. Remember the women who stayed when the world ran away. The world did not survive because of the prayers. It survived because of the wine, the salt, and the steel. And it survived because of her. What would you have done in her place? Would you have risked the fire for a stranger's child? Tell me in the comments. And if you believe these voices should be remembered, hit the subscribe button. We have more shadows to explore.